Welcome to Hey Boo, a witches podcast, where we unite as modern mystics, as cosmic sisters, and as believers in the extraordinary. I'm Meika Cooper.
And I'm Kristen Schaefer. Let's journey together across continents and constellations as we embrace the magic that weaves our stories together.
Are you ready to embark on this voyage, dear boos? The stars await, the cauldron bubbles, and the magic beckons.
Tune in,
Turn on, and let the enchantment begin.
Welcome back, boos.
Yes, welcome.
So we left off our first episode talking about how we would get into all of our ghost tales.
My favorite topic.
Yes. One of the things that initiated the idea of this podcast was to share these because they're just so fascinating and captivating. So Meika's going to kick us off with some of her stories.
I have so many, so I'm just going to begin at the beginning. I feel like for me, the veil between this world and the other side was always really thin. I just didn't know that anything was different. And actually, I don't really think it is different. I think a lot of people experience that. A lot of times as kids, we're shut down, told that's just your imagination, or literally shut down by people just calling you a weirdo or whatever it is. For me, it started when I was really little. So I had pretend friends, and their names were Jan and McElroy. And I don't really, weird names, right? I don't really remember seeing them at all. I remember like their names, and I remember a tiny little snippet of me playing with them on a swing set. But my mom would tell me, Meika, you were seeing things. She's like, my friends were a little spooked. These beings were in the room with you. So I think that was the beginning. Those were probably spirit guides that I was seeing as a little kid, but I don't really have a recollection.
What did these characters look like to you? What did they feel like?
So it's funny because they don't have a face. I guess they have a gender to me. It's more a feeling of them. But that's the only thing that I can remember. I don't remember faces at all. It's just a feeling of one feels more masculine, one feels more feminine, and they were my friends. And that's really all I remember of it. I just know that it spooked people around me.
They had an essence.
An essence, absolutely. Absolutely. I was thinking about this on my car ride this morning, and I was thinking about like, God, what a funny name that is. Like, who would think of that name? And I was thinking of what do they feel like? McElroy. I don't know why I called him that. I call my spirit guide now Idean because he told me that was the name that channeled through. I feel like that was him. The essence of him feels very wise and strong and protective. And then Jan feels almost like a teacher, like one of your, like a favorite, I don't know, like a kindergarten teacher, like somebody who's fun and loving and warm. I'm glad that you asked that question because that's all that I have as a memory is just the essence.
And have you ever met McElroy?
No, no.
I've never heard that name before.
I know it's a really odd name. It's a really odd name.
And then it's just like Jan.
Right, exactly. Yeah, really odd name. So that was the beginning. And then I just always had a fascination with spirits, with the other side. So like my mom, I was talking to her yesterday about something that was going on with Kainoa, and it was kind of different. And she's like, oh, Meika, she's like you were normal. She goes, you spent half your time in graveyards. And I'm like, I did? Like, I don't remember all of that. But I remember playing the Ouija board. I would have my friends come over, and we were little. We were probably, I don't know, maybe 10. And my brother was like 4 or 5 years younger. And like his friends were like, you used to scare the shit out of me. Like when you would play Ouija, things would happen. I lived in the woods, and I would take the Ouija board out, and I would love it. Like it was, it was a little mischievous, I guess, because they were really little, and I knew that I could really work the board and things would come through. And so it was kind of fun for me to watch their faces go, oh my God. So I remember one in particular, his name was Father Watt, and he was a priest, and he came through the board, and it would say, like, what I would say, what's your name? Father Watt. And I would say things like, if you are here, I would light candles. And I was like, if you are here, make the candle go out. And the candle goes out. If you're here, I had this little black cat named Allie. And I said, if you're here, make the cat sneeze. And the cat goes, achoo. And I mean, my brother and his friends went running. They're like, "Ah, get me out of here."
Wow.
It was a little scary. Like, to be honest, I always kind of had like it was kind of like the chills around it. But I was so fascinated because I knew that I was really contacting people. I mean, there was no doubt. Like, how do
Right.
you, the candles are going out, the cat's sneezing,
Yeah.
it
Tell
was,
me, so how did you get a Ouija board in the first place?
I would imagine that I just wanted it. And my mom, like, it was just one of those like things. I probably got it for like a birthday or Christmas or something, or maybe it was just a present, but it was always something that I was just so fascinated with. And I kept the same Ouija board through all the way up until my 30s, and I would use it until I started to get a little bit freaked out, and that's another ghost story. So it really started there, and I would dabble with that and scare people. And I don't know if it was the nicest thing to do, but that's what I did with my brother's friends.
I have to say, just to pause and take a break for a second, that I
Mhm.
always had this belief that Ouija boards were dark magic.
Yes. So I totally can understand that. And here's my perspective on it. Because I actually got to a point, which I'll share, where I threw everything away. I got to get anything that's to do with any of this stuff, this ghost stuff, out of my space. I believe that why Ouija boards get that stigma is because you have to know how to use them. And you can conjure darker energies. From what I've experienced, the lower vibrational energies, the ones that are more like kind of poltergeist, or the ones who they're not on the angelic realm, they are the ones who will move things and make things happen and make things like they're more in the physical realm. I don't know if it's because they're lower vibration, they're still higher, but they're lower vibration, that they can move things easier. They can make things happen in this 3D world. And so a lot of times you'll get those kinds of people. And also, people are scared. They're scared of the other side. So there's like fear when you're playing the Ouija board. And so when you're in the fearful space and you haven't protected yourself and you're not calling in the light, and you can have a say on who comes in. It's like only angels, only light beings. I didn't do that as a little kid. And I
Well, you
did
know
get some.
better.
Yeah, exactly. But I really think that a lot of times, those beings are attracted to fear. And so you will get some spooky things that happen. And I absolutely did. It's why I started throwing the stuff away. I'm like, get out of here. Like, I don't want any part of this anymore.
I think it always
But
comes back to intention.
absolutely, 100%. And the person I still, like, up in my 30s, was like, okay, I'm never looking at another Ouija board again. And then I heard Abraham Hicks talked about how that was her start. She and Jerry started playing with the Ouija board, and she was like, oh, this is so fun. I love this. And like, to hear her talk about the Ouija board like that, I was like, oh yeah, it doesn't have to be dark. It can be fun. It's the communication tool. It's just how you use it and what your intentions
Yeah.
are with it.
Yeah, it's an
Absolutely.
extension of our mind, right? So people are always prone to think the worst and go to a place
Yeah,
of fear. But if you flip the script and you change your perspective, you can very much have the experience you're looking for. But yeah, it
absolutely.
does feel kind of programmed for people to want to lean into the scary, the fearful side of things.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, my oldest son is very sensitive to the spirit world, like I am. And he asked me, I think it was his ninth birthday, so 2 years ago, Mom, can I have a Ouija board? And I was like, I don't really want you to have one, honey. And he's like, why? And I said, because you have to know how to use it. And I have to, like, trust you will only call in the light. And you're so sensitive and you're such a magnet. You could call in some things that you don't want around you. And so I think we should wait. And we did. So he doesn't have one yet, which I think at this point now he's 11. I think it would be okay, but I still he's so sensitive. He literally sees beings in front of him. Like he hasn't talked about it a whole lot yet, but I want to get more juice from him. He doesn't really like to talk about it. But I don't know. I just have to go with my intuition on that. You have to be careful with how you use it for
Right.
sure.
Yeah. And I can relate to that because that feeling of knowing something is there and not knowing how to address it because you can't see it, it's scary because your
Yeah.
brain is not able to understand a sensation that you can't physically see. I've met people who have this as well, and they just shut it down because it's just too much.
Yeah.
So I think at some point we should have an episode around techniques and things that you can do to soften that feeling, or maybe
Yeah.
go into it with an intention that, look, I only bring love and light and things that are harmonious with my auric field into my space. And
Yeah, absolutely.
that kind of exercise, because I think there's a lot to glean from that. Our lives been programmed to just not acknowledge because it kind of feels weird.
For sure. If I hadn't met someone who really talked to me about calling things in and setting intentions and that you have a say in what comes in, I would have shut down my gifts for sure because it got scary. And I was like, I don't want this. I don't want it. It did. It stopped for a while. Like I stopped connecting.
But you know
So,
what blows my mind is that it's so simple. It truly just is your intention.
yeah,
Just
right.
you don't have to say it
Right.
out loud. You can just say it in your head. I don't welcome anything other than light and love in my space.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
Start, stop. Things have bubbled up where I feel very much like a late in life witch coming out of my broom closet, and
Mhm.
how people are receiving this information and not understanding it and having to feel like I need to explain what this is. I say a late in life witch because these sensations and these feelings and these experiences I've had, I never had a name for them until
Yes.
recently, until you start
Right.
looking into it and finding your people and understanding that it's not weird. This is part of why we want to share these stories, because obviously we're not the only people on this planet Earth that have had spiritual interactions, good or bad.
Right. I would guess that the vast majority of us do. I mean, when I really started to think about this, like why, people are like, oh my God, that's such a gift. I can't believe you can communicate with the other side. I'm like, we're spirits first. Like that's the part of us that is eternal. Why is this spirit language or like speaking to spirit or communication or even like soul to soul communication when you're doing like a psychic reading or just intuition? Why is that so foreign to us? That should be our first language.
Right. The shift that needs to happen, and obviously this is a cliche in the spiritual world, but that we are spirits having a human experience.
Right.
So, when your physical form goes away, when you pass away, energy is not created or destroyed. Your energy is synonymous with your soul and your spirit. So the fact that we would have these perceptions are not fake. Obviously,
Right.
it's good to have some level of skepticism. You don't believe everything you see, but there is a difference in that something to be real or authentic because it's a sensation in your body that doesn't match with maybe a charlatan or whatever. Like, there's
Yeah.
such a distinct difference. And I think everybody knows that intuitively if they
Mhm.
tap into that and turn the brain off, that this all is very much as real as what we see in front of us.
Right. And it just, as you're sharing that, I just think like, wouldn't it be so amazing if that was embedded in the curriculum of our kids? Because they come in with that already. And just to have that fostered and taught and remembered throughout your life, what a different world it would be.
Yeah, we talked about our boys when Bodhi would talk about someone he was seeing or talking to, like we never made him feel weird about it.
Yeah.
I thought very beautiful and special that he's so
Yeah.
open. He made a comment that he said he felt like someone's watching him at night. And
Mm.
I said, we have very, very protective energy and spirits in our home looking after us. But if you feel weird about it, say, I need my space. Please go away. Let me
Mhm.
sleep. Give me
Yeah.
my space. Like all you have to do is set that intention and that's
Yeah.
it. It's so
Yeah.
basic. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be scary. I have a lot of moments where I put the sheets up over my nose and I just was like, go away, go away, go away, go away. But anyhow,
Exactly.
yeah. So back to Ouija board Meika at 10 years old,
Okay.
freaking out
Yeah.
her
So
6-year-old brother and friends.
yes. And so that kind of continued um throughout my childhood, just always wanting to connect with spirits. And apparently I spent some time at cemeteries, which I do remember on a Halloween asking my friends, so like, let's meet at this time. Like I remember that a little bit, but I don't remember like a regular occurrence. But I do remember the Ouija board always. Like when my friends would come over, we would play and we would just always have something come through.
I have a graveyard follow-up. Like, how many were there by your house that you're like, hey guys, let's go meet up at the cemetery?
Only one.
Okay. I mean, back when we were kids, I was like, I'll see you at the mall, but
Not in my world. We lived in this little tiny small town. There weren't any malls. There weren't even any stoplights. So we had to entertain ourselves somehow. I love it. So anyways, so yes, the Ouija board was a big part of it. I think my first that I remember real download spirit is there. My grandfather had passed away and I was a freshman in high school. And my mom's dad had passed away, and I didn't really know at this point in my life, I didn't know all of the abusiveness that happened between my mom and her dad. I didn't know the stories because I was pretty young and she didn't share them with me yet. But the night that he passed away, I had a dream. And I get this a lot, and I'm sure all you boos out there get this as well in some form or another. But it's like that space in between dream and sleep where you know that you're in another dimension, but the room looks the same. It's almost like your spirit's a little out of your body, I guess. But because like the room is the same, everything's the same, but you can't move your body. Like your body's sleeping, but your consciousness is almost awake. It's almost like, for me, how I experience it is like you almost slip into the other side. And so I was in that space, and my grandfather came and he kneeled at the side of the bed, and he just looked so sad. I'm like, the word that I use is like pathetic. I mean, he just looked like, he just was like remorseful. And he looked at me and he said, please tell your mom that I am so sorry. And then I woke up and I told my dad, I was like, Dad, I think grandpa came to me in my dream and he told me to tell mom I'm sorry. I said, is that going to upset her? Should I say something? He's like, for sure. You have to tell her. He's like, yes, you have to tell her. And so I told her and she just burst into tears. And I didn't really know why. It meant something to her to understand that. So that was that.
my
Then,
body was
yeah,
lighting up during that story.
yeah,
The
yeah,
BTs, the boot tingles are going all up and down.
for sure. It's very powerful. That's like a beautiful part of mediumship, is to be able to deliver those messages to people. I'm sure there was so much conflict going on within my mom about her dad's passing, and there was just so many unresolved things. And then just to hear that,
Right.
I'm really sorry. Then things got really weird when I went away to college. That's like the beginning of a spooky, like Spookstown. And I think it had to do a lot with, one, I was on my own, and two, I was meeting people. I was meeting, like, at the time, I mean, we even called ourselves witches back then. I was meeting other people who had these interesting stories and perceptions and abilities. So I, of course, brought my trusty old Ouija board to my college dorm with me. And on Thursday nights, instead of like going out to the parties, my friend and I would have Ouija parties. And so we would invite people over, have some beers, and play Ouija.
What could go wrong?
Yeah, exactly. The weird part of this, and I don't understand exactly why, but I wasn't getting anything scary. I was not getting anything scary. I was getting more like messages about people or people's past loved ones who had passed away. So, for instance, I still am kind of, I'm like, it's a little unbelievable. So we had just met these guys. They lived in the dorms over. We're like, yeah, come on over. We're gonna play Ouija. So they come over. I mean, I barely know their names, so don't know anything about them. And my friend Gina and I start playing the Ouija board, and it said, John, that was one of the guy's names. John stole, John stole, John stole pot, John stole pot. I was like, pot like marijuana? Yes, yes, John stole. John's eyes were like, you could see him like start to like, just like anger. His eyes start to get really big, and he looks at his friend and he's like, why the fuck would you tell them that? And tell us anything. We don't know anything about it. Then he realized like, oh my God, I just ratted myself out. These girls are going to think I'm a total thief, which I am, because he obviously stole. And it was just like this embarrassing moment. We're like, okay, well, it could just be the Ouija board, like trying to just pass it off. We're like, oh my God, he's a total thief.
And he
so
had
that
no
was
remorse. He got mad about it.
He did, because he thought his friend had told us, because he was like, there's no way. He didn't believe, he thought we were, he didn't really believe in the Ouija board. Probably wanted to come over and like hang out with some girls. He didn't really care about what was going on. He didn't believe it. So he thought his friend Nate had told us. He's like, Nate, why the fuck did you tell them? Like, so I didn't say anything, dude. I didn't say anything.
Nani's naughty.
Totally naughty. And then, so some of the guys from downstairs came over, got this one female, and started saying, little love Tiffany, little love Tiffany. And the guy, Chris, just starts bawling. And I was like, Chris, what happened? He's like, my girlfriend in high school, his name was Tiffany, and she died. She was in a car accident. And I used to call her Little Love. And I was like, oh, Little Love Tiffany. So we were like hugging, and like, that was like my intro for it. Was like random, kind of just random spirits, and they do like little spooky things that were mischievous and fun. But this was more, I'm getting messages that are important to receive. I started getting a reputation like in the dorms for being like the Ouija girl. And so people would come, like strangers, like knocking on my door, like, hey, I hear that you playing Ouija and you're getting people on the board, like, can I come and play sometime? I'm like, sure, whatever. So that was actually really fun. And then things kind of got quiet my sophomore year. And then my junior year, we moved into a haunted house. I didn't know it was a haunted house. It was beautiful. It was this beautiful house. It was in the neighborhood of Santa Barbara, where more like the professors live. And it was like on the edge of where the students lived. And we lied to get the place. We said we were med students and like really studious. And so we went to go check it out. And when we went there, the girls who lived there before, they were like, you don't want to live here. And I was like, what? And they're like, this place ruined our lives. And I was like, what are you talking about? And I in my head, I was thinking, this house is so amazing. They have a friend who's going to move in. So they're trying to get us to spook us or whatever. So we ended up getting the place. It was summertime, and some of my friends had moved in, and I was living in LA at the time, and I had gone up just to visit. I hadn't moved in yet, but so I went, and I was like surprising everybody. I went into the living room, and nobody was home. So I was like, okay, so I'm sitting there. I'm like, well, I'm sure somebody will come home soon, because there was like 5 roommates, and sitting there, and I'm like, I feel like I'm being watched. I got up. I just had this really weird feeling, and I got up and I went outside, and I just waited for everybody to come home. I was like, I don't want to be in the house by myself. So little things would happen. And there was like 3 females and 3 males that lived in the house. And it would really only happen to the females, but it started off small things. It had something with keys. I would set my keys down by the door, and then they weren't there. And I'm like, okay, I feel like I'm going crazy. My keys I know that I set them there, and I'd find them like in my desk drawer. And I'm like, am I losing my mind? Like, why? And it just kept happening with my keys. I'm like, okay, something is going on here. This is really weird. So one night I'm studying, and it was really late. It was probably like 2 a.m, and I had a final the next day, and I was just cramming for a final. My door opens, and just a little bit, just a crack. And one of my good guy friends' name was Sean. And I was like, Sean, I'm like, it's late and you're scaring me. And because I didn't see anybody there, I thought he just like moved the door open, and the door goes and closed. And I was like, Sean, you're scaring me. Stop. And then when I said that, boom, 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 the door opening, close, opening, close, opening, close, like poltergeist movie, like
And
so
Sean is
scary.
not there, he is
No
there.
one's there.
No, okay.
Sean's not there.
Okay.
Then I had like a little ensuite and the door of the bathroom started going open, close, open, close, open, close. So both the doors are
Oh,
opening and
no.
closing. I'm in my bed. I'm freaking out that I had a TV in my room. The TV goes on, off, on, off. I was like almost out of my body scared. And so I was like, I got to get out of the room. And so I mustered up all the energy that I could and ran into Sean's room. And I was like, Sean, he was asleep. I'm like, Sean, can I stay the night in here, please? And he goes, in his sleep, he goes, yes, but don't bring that shit in my room. And I was like, okay. I'm like, I'm not meaning to at all. But like, it was weird. Like, that's just one of my stories. But the girls, there was like a fire in one of their bedrooms. Like the candle, my friend Rose said the candle, it like raised up and started a fire on her tapestry. Just really menacing things.
Had you ever thought to bring out your Ouija board in that house? What the hell is up? What do you want? Why are you being all crazy up in here?
Yes. I feel like, because I know I had my Ouija board. I don't ever remember playing it. Either we were like, okay, I don't want to know, or it didn't work. Like for some reason, I feel like it didn't work. And I don't know. Because I know that I had my Ouija board. I had like my whole altar out. My Ouija board was usually a part of it, but I don't remember ever playing, which you would think you would. I didn't.
I mean, I guess the force of their presence was so strong.
It was like crazy strong. So I was telling our neighbors about this. I was like, there's some just weird stuff happening in the house. And they're like, shut up, that's not real. And I was like, just come over and sit in the house for a while and we'll see what happens. And sure enough, things in the kitchen, the stove literally, it jumped. Like, that's the only way I can explain it. Gung, gung. And they're like, what the fuck? We got up and unplugged it just to like, still, gung, gung. It's like moving around. They booked out of the house so fast. They're like, we're never coming back. We're never coming back here. That place is so scary.
You don't even need to watch Poltergeist. You're living your own version of it in that house.
I totally was. And like, I mean, this is going to sound so weird. And I still don't even know what this is. Literally, we would order pizza and like the pizza delivery people would come and they're like, do you guys have a giant cat that's like the size of a dog? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And they're like, there's some just weird animals around here. And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I really don't. And they're like, okay, I don't know what that was. It was just always weird phenomenons happening in that house. Things people would say, that things that would happen when they would come over. It was always so bizarre.
I feel like there should be some going back in the archives to find out if that house is built on some kind of graveyard or something. There has to be something that has created that stir of energy.
Oh, 100%. 100%. It was, I don't know. I remember my friend who lived there trying to find stuff, and I don't think she ever did. But I've driven past that before and they've totally remodeled it. Like, and I've wondered, are they trying to like tear down certain parts? I don't know. It's because it looks really weird how they have it now. It was a really pretty house and now it's kind of a funky shape. I have dreams about it all the time. I have dreams that I live in that house and that it's like a different house, but it's the feeling. It's that frenetic energy feeling where there's like a haunt in there.
Yeah. I'm like, did it start morphing into the Winchester Mystery House? You know about that in the Bay Area?
Right. Oh my God. I've always wanted to visit that. I love that place. I think you actually have a story about the Winchester Mystery House.
I mean, it's kooky, like doors leading out on the second floor to nothing. But this woman was led by a spirit to create all these funky hallways and doors to places that made no sense. So I imagine that's what it like morphed into.
Right, exactly. I know. I almost want to just knock on the door. Like, I lived here in college. Can I just get my little feelers in there and see if those energies are still in there? So
that would be a good Boo field trip.
Totally revisiting the haunted houses. Oh, I love it.
We could do that after all of our ghost stories. We'll just create a map of like all the places we've been haunted and go back and see what's up.
Totally, totally. Oh my gosh. Oh, I love it. Well, and that year, I really wanted to go to New Orleans. I think I got in the feeling of haunt, and I didn't know New Orleans is like one of the most haunted cities in the world. Like, I didn't know that, but I just had this call to New Orleans. And I remember calling my mom going, nobody will go to New Orleans with me. I think I'm going to go by myself. And she's like, please don't go by yourself. So I didn't end up going, but there was just that feeling of living. It was, I mean, it was scary, but at the same time, I remember thinking when I moved out of that house, like, will life ever feel as magical? I felt like everybody in that house, we were like living a movie. Everyone in that house knew what was going on, but the outside world didn't really understand what was happening. We didn't fully understand what was happening, because we just knew it was happening. But there was something that was so mysterious that made life feel really fun. It was like, there's something really fun about it. Even though I was scared, I sort of missed it once I moved out of there.
I mean, I don't imagine that that's sustainable though. Your nervous system would be just fringed all the time. 'Cause
Right.
it's like, who's going to bother me tonight? I don't know. I like my 8 hours of sleep, so I don't need some
Right.
slamming the door in the middle of the night.
Totally. But it's weird because it didn't happen all the time. There would be weeks with no activity, and then all of a sudden something would happen. I don't know what was the catalyst for the activity. Would be interesting now. I wasn't thinking about it
No,
then.
they were probably like, Mika looks too relaxed this week. Let's
Right.
put it on the agenda
Exactly.
for like, what could we do? Let's like flush the toilet. I mean, I don't know.
Totally.
I think most people would probably be like, I'm out immediately. I
Right.
think I would realize.
Well, one of my girlfriends did. She's like, I'm out. I can't live here. I cannot live here.
So
'Cause she,
tell us why you didn't have that urgency just to leave the house.
I guess, you know, there was something about it that I kind of liked, which sounds maybe a little bit odd. Also, I loved everyone who was living there. Like, I loved the synergy between everybody. And the house itself was really amazing. It had a pool. It was right on the ocean, had an ocean view with a pool. You look at it, you're like, oh my God, I'm living, I'm a college student and I'm living here. Like, this is totally amazing.
You're a med student.
Yeah, med student. Exactly. Exactly. And it was right by where the best surfing point in Isla Vista, which is like, so all the surfers would ride by on their bikes, and kind of like a little piece of heaven as far as the landscape around the house, just what was
Mika,
going on inside. It's hard to leave.
after this episode, want to look up the address on Zillow.
Totally.
We'll know if it's still haunted, if it's under $1 million or whatever, because in Santa Barbara with that
Totally.
view.
Oh, absolutely. That was the college part of it.
I have a
Yeah.
follow-up question because I know other
Yes.
people will be wondering this, but
Yeah.
just a little side convo about New Orleans. And like, when you did go there, did you experience anything?
Oh, for sure. For sure. I mean, I think a Hey Boo episode in New Orleans would be amazing. I don't know if it's the energy of the place too. There's like a lot of voodoo down. I mean, it's an
Yeah.
interesting
Right.
dynamic down there. But yeah,
Yeah,
I
I'm
would
here
want to
for the
give them more.
voodoo. Yeah, and I understand what you're saying because I have visited there before and the energy feels thick,
Yes.
for lack
It's
of a better, it's not like light, like when you go to Hawaii and you're like, I want a Mai Tai. It feels like almost like a heavy rain.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Like
You
the
can
air is thick and the
yeah.
energy is thick. There's just a lot of juicy stuff going on there.
Yeah, oh, for sure. For sure. The every time I've gone there, I've gone on their ghost tour, and it's amazing. Amazing. Like, we have to do like a Hey Boo goes to New Orleans, because
Yeah. I've
oh,
done one in
those
San
stories.
Francisco, also very fascinating. Which, side note, I don't know if people know this, but a lot of homes in San Francisco are actually built on graves. There's like a
Oh,
whole thing about it. And I learned it on that ghost tour as well. There's a lot of juju going on there. And I mean, as there is everywhere, like it's not like people just die in specific places, but there's a little more
yeah.
stagnant energy in some more than others. And that's definitely
Yeah.
you up there with
Yeah.
New Orleans.
It's one of my favorite cities. I love it. I love that feeling of the air there. Like, I don't know. It reminds me of the house that I lived in. It's
Right.
like, you might not want to live there forever. Like, I don't think I would want to live in New Orleans, but it's sure fun to visit,
Yeah.
because there is that different magical energy there.
Right. Okay, so back to the college timeline. You moved out
Okay.
of the house. What got you to move out of the house? Was it graduation?
It was just time. It was like in Santa Barbara, it was usually like, okay, your freshman year, you live in the dorm. Second year, you live on this street. Third year, you live on this street. And then you either go downtown or stay in Isla Vista. And we were just, Isla Vista is like, it's just party, party, party all the time. And so by the time you're a senior, a lot of people are like, I need a little break from just it's like, so we lived downtown, and that was like a really fun year. After all of that, after living in a haunted house for a full year, I think I asked subconsciously for a break from everything. There was like kind of a quiet time with spirits, and then it all kind of started like ramping back up again in my mid 20s. Like there's a period of time where I didn't want to fall asleep. I felt like spirits were pulling at me and saying my name, and I'd get these weird visitations that I didn't like. And then I met Kaleo, my husband, and he lived in this apartment. So he was teaching at the time, and he'd have to go to work earlier than I did. So he would get up early, and when he would get up, I would like get up for a second and then fall back asleep. Whenever I would like go in that in between space again, there was this, what I felt like was a little boy. It was like a little boy is what it felt like. Like I couldn't necessarily see it because it would always be behind me, and it would start banging on the bed. And I go, and then like force myself like all the way awake. And like it happened every morning that he left, just boom, 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 banging on the bed. And I told him, I was like, Cleo, something is in your apartment. And he's like, what? I'm like, there is like a little boy in your apartment, like the spirit of a little boy in your apartment. One night we're talking about it, and we're standing in the hallway, and all of a sudden you feel like a draft. I mean, it was like both of us felt it. And he looks at me like, what was that? We had a candle going in his living room, and the candle went, I've never seen a flame do this. I mean, it was like just a regular candle flame. It jumped all the way up to the ceiling and went, he's not used to this stuff. Like I lived in a haunted house. Like I'm more used to it than he was like, what is going on? I'm like, I don't honestly, Kaleo, I don't know. But I like, it scares me because I'm kind of glad that he's here when you're here too, because it like he's mostly just when I'm by myself, and that would scare me. I would just get like up and then ready to go and like out the door as soon as I could, because I didn't want to be there by myself. And so that really started me checking in with other mediums. And I think that's where like I started to get curious about mediumship, because I was like, I need to find somebody who can understand what's happening here, and because I don't understand it. So I went to this lady, her name was Becky Loving. She was so sweet, and she was a medium. And she said, yes, she said, there is a little boy that is in that apartment, and he needs your help. You keep telling him to go to the light. Just tell him to go to the light, to go to the light, to go to the light. So
Not create a bonfire with it like he was doing.
Right, exactly. Totally. Not burn down the apartment. Yes. So I went back home, and a couple of days later, I was awake. Like, so a lot of times when I would communicate with him, or when he would bang on the bed, I was in that in-between space. So I was wide awake. And my body felt different. I was like, feels like really relaxed. And there was just a different sensation. And Kaleo was asleep. And I looked up and I saw this light. It was sort of like this whitish light above me, kind of have a blue tint in there too. And it was like kind of hovering above me. And I was like, I think that's him. And I was like, go to the light, go to the light, go to the light. And I, all of a sudden, none of this was like a conscious doing. It just sort of happened. All of a sudden, my energy, like I could feel it, and I was wide awake, but my energy like kind of lifted up. That's the way I can describe it, and touched his. It went, boop. So ours just merged for like a second, and then boop, he was gone. It was like, and he never came back. And so I was like, I think I just helped him cross over. Like I had no experience in that. It wasn't my intention. Like I am going to help this little boy cross over. It just sort of happened and he was gone. And hopefully he's, where I'm sure he's in where he wanted to go. He was obviously frustrated with where he was. So that was that was just such a profound experience.
I mean, I can only imagine what could have happened if it was a young boy who had already passed over. Like, obviously, that in itself sounds traumatic, right? Like to have
Yeah.
died so young.
Yeah.
And where is this? What's the location at this point? Are you still in
And it's
Okay.
Pasadena-ish.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Area. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy, but that kind of experience, I started to like kind of connect the dots of my life and how I've had all of these ghost stories to tell and people going, some of my friends like, you should write a book. I'm like, I don't know. And then I started thinking like, why does this happen? And I'm pretty sure I just helped someone. I wonder if I'm supposed to do something with this. Like, I wonder if there is a way that I'm supposed to help with like, cause why does it feel like everywhere I go, there's this spirit connection coming in somehow? So over the years, I started taking mediumship classes and learning more about the spirit realm. And then I went to this class with Doreen Virtue, which was when she was still practicing her magic. And I thought it was going to be a really small class. I had no idea how big she was. I had no idea. And I was petrified to go. I was like, it took all my courage to go to this class. I was so scared to go to a class on mediumship. She called it angel card reading. I didn't know that there would be mediumship in there. It was just angel card reading. And for some reason, I was so scared to go. I thought it would be intimate. And I got to the hotel and there was 500 or 600 people. And I was like, oh my God, this is like, whoa, she's big. And I had no idea. So I'm in this class with 500 or 600 people and she does these I think she's just like a person that like activates. She's like a gift activator, like just being in her presence. Because it wasn't like she really taught us like a deep skill set. It was just like, okay, here's what you do, and boom, go ahead, get into your groups. And so I got into the first group, and I'm with this woman, and I'm like, and oh, she's like, we're gonna try mediumship, and I was like, oh, I didn't know that was a part of this. Okay, this is fun. Still scared. So we get into this group, and this woman, I'm just like, okay, I'm seeing something that looks like a bubble windshield. It's like, I'm like, I don't know. Is it a Volkswagen bus? Is it an airplane? And as soon as I said airplane, I could feel her go like, oh my God. And I was like, okay, we're in an airplane. I'm in an airplane with a pilot. He's very smart. He's very intelligent. I can feel his intelligence. And he died. That's how he died. That's how he died. He died in a plane crash. And I was like, and he didn't feel any pain. It was like, boom, like it was so fast. It was like, boom, he ran into a mountain. And I had my eyes closed. I opened my eyes. This woman is just bawling her eyes out. And she's like, that's my dad. That's my dad. My dad was a pilot and he passed away in a plane crash. And I always wondered, like, did he feel pain? But you're telling me that he didn't. She's like, no one's been able to connect with my dad. And I really had this thought, Kristen, she's fucking with me. Like, I'm like, this woman is like, she's not telling me the truth. I'm like, did someone pay her? Like, cause I was like, it felt so much like I was making this up, but here's this woman crying. And I'm like, looking at Doreen, I'm like, is she pay? Like, I thought like, am I on like some sort of like,
Streaming show.
yes, totally. Or like a, what is like, there's like prank shows. Like, am I being like
Yeah,
punked, like, like, that's what it felt like. So I was like, okay. But then like her emotions, I'm like, she's a really good actress. And I was like, and I didn't feel it. Like, I was like, whoa, I'm like, I think that was real. I think it was real. Then I go to this other woman. She comes up and she literally grabs me from the crowd. She's like, she's like, you're my partner. And I was like, okay. And she was a very experienced medium. And she's like, I want you to go first. And I was like, oh, because she was telling me about what she does. And she's like, you go first. I was like, oh God, I don't know. you're good. I'm like, you do this for a living. I'm like, I can't. She's like, no, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. You do it. You do it. I said, I feel like there's like a grandma, she's playing the piano. And I look up at her and she's like, mm-hmm. She's like nodding her head, like, good, good, good. And I was like, close my eyes again. I'm like, okay, she's showing me like a book and a peacock feather. And she's like, mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I'm like, okay, okay. And so there are a couple more things that I don't remember. And we get it out. And she's like, yes, my grandma played the piano. She's like, I hear her music all the time in my head. And she's like, the peacock feather. She's like, I'm writing a book. I considered putting a peacock feather on the cover of my book. And she's like, that's confirmation that that's what I'm going to do. So thank you. And I'm thinking, this is so weird. This is so weird because it feels like I just made all of that up. I'm like, and you're telling me that there's some accuracy to it. So after that, I was just lit up. I was like, oh my God. I remember just coming home and like telling my friends, like, oh my God, I can't believe what I just experienced.
Yeah. It's
Like,
like a dopamine hit.
it totally. It was
Yeah.
just like the world's magical again. It's
Yes.
now magical again. Like this is something real and something that I don't exactly know what to do with it, but I feel like I need to do something with it
You know what?
to
You're doing it
help.
because, I got this hit while you're talking. We're normalizing what I think
Mhm.
is perceived as charlatan and weird and like,
Yes.
okay, maybe whatever. But to me, it's like, this is it. This is it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Well, and it's weird. It's what's interesting to me is when you said charlatan, it reminded me of when I really started to like claim that I was doing this and that I could do this, that I actually it created a divide between me and some of my friends because one friend was like, I don't trust you anymore. I don't trust you anymore because he doesn't believe in that. He's like, I stopped having any respect for you when you started charging for your readings. And I was like, oh God, that's wow. You don't know who I am. You really don't know me if you think it's in me to fake people out. I have a hard time even doing readings because I feel like I have a lot of integrity and I want it to be as accurate as I can make it. Like because it always kind of feels like you're making it up,
Right.
which is like, and it's such a delicate thing for
How
people.
you know that you're not making it up is one, it makes no sense to you. That's the thing that I always
Yes.
feel. The things that I'm saying to you right now, I have no connection to. It's so arbitrary, but if to the person it lands, that actually I needed to hear that. That to me is science enough. I mean, I
Yeah.
know there's duality. Spirituality is not all this woo-woo shit. There is science to it. I know I saw something recently where they did like a neuro diagnosis on a medium and saw how the mapping of the brain and what lights up. And if that's what you need to see to understand it, fine. But also, we're not here to convince anyone, right?
No, not at all. Not at all.
It's funny that this is what triggered it, but a back to school night, the teacher said, when you share with the group of parents here about a concern you have, speak from your own experience, right? So that would not be like, I heard, just to get away from rumor.
Yeah.
But if you were able to speak from your experience, that is not up for debate. Your experience, how
Right.
you perceive something, what you're sharing, that's your experience. So
Yeah.
someone can't come to me like, you're a liar.
Right.
Like,
Right.
all right, I have an insane imagination because there's no way that I could come up with the things that have happened. And very much like you said, you feel like you're just getting punked all the time because you're like, that. I can't make that up. And I just get to a point where I laugh because I think it's so amusing when something
Right.
happens or I have an intersection with a spirit or, something very synchronistic happens. I'm like, that is like way more than coincidence. Like you just, it's wild. And I think
Yeah.
the more open you are to it, the more it happens. It begets itself even more. And then you're like, oh
Yep.
my God, I feel like magic. You're just in that space of believing and open to the possibilities, just like
Mhm.
anything in life. Our brains are the ones that are wired to create the narrative and the story that you can or can't do something.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with spirituality. It's like when you open yourself up to the possibilities of what you can experience, life feels more beautiful and so much more full of light and
Absolutely.
experiences that I had no idea could be so profound. And
Totally.
it's in the everyday glimmers.
Absolutely. And, you sharing that just reminded me of when I was in that space of, okay, things are starting to open up, but I don't really know where to go to continue this journey. And I got a reading from James Von Prague, and he said, go and research development circles in your area. So I wanted to say that to anyone listening who's feeling, okay, there may be stuff in there. I do have these experiences and I would like to develop them further. Look up development circles in your area, because I guarantee, I mean, depending on where you live, and at the time I lived in Santa Monica, so LA area was just filled with development circles. So I just kind of tapped into who felt right, and I ended up with this beautiful teacher that I learned so much from. And that's just like a great way to play, to really play in
We
that
should
in that realm.
consider doing that as an extension, because the times that I've done those developmental circles with you, or development circles, were so gratifying. And you
Yeah.
created your own, which I love. So
Yeah.
your James Von Prague said, go find them. You created it. And look what this
Yeah.
sort of amplified out, this experience for me. What would have I done? You
Yeah. Oh, I'm getting the boo tingles when you said that. So if you are looking or are interested in a development circle, comment. Give it, like, reach out to us, comment. It's definitely something that can be done in person or online as well. It can all be done via Zoom, and that works really well too.
yeah.
So I would be totally open to creating that if there's enough interest in it, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and I can speak firsthand experience that it was awesome. I loved it. I looked forward to it. It was so cool to be able to tap into a different part of yourself that has
Yeah.
either laid dormant, or you didn't even know you had it, or you just, you where your attention goes, energy flows. To explore different facets of yourself is very, very fulfilling. And that's
Yeah.
what you did that for me. So 1000% you
Oh,
on the right path.
awesome. Well, so I want to hear your stories. I probably have more, but they're not coming to me right now. So we
All right.
can,
Well, no, we can go back
yeah,
and forth if you want. I was actually holding, because when you would share a story, I'm like, oh my God, I had that happen too. These experiences that I've had, you don't know what they are. They've never been sort of introduced to you with a name or anything. And in the last 9 years, I guess, since my dad passed away, is when I really started tapping into a lot of what you've been talking about, out of curiosity, out of wanting to understand things better. But yes, going back and thinking about experiences as a child, or growing up through my teens and 20s, and even in the last couple decades, just being like, yeah, that I didn't really talk about it with anyone. I just kind of stuffed it down, because I just thought it was super weird to be like, oh hey, yeah, something was in your room last night, when I'd sleep over at a boyfriend's house, and I don't know what it was, but like my go-to was just ducking under the sheets. It's
mm,
just my default response to feeling something and not understanding it and being like, what the fuck, and go away. I'm in a different headspace now where I'm like, what's up? I mean, I don't want to get a Ouija board. I don't feel like that speaks to me, but I do want to just
yeah,
get in more of a space of download. Maybe I scribe and I figure out what it is. But most of the time I know who it is. Like my dad is so, so, so present in this home, and it's beautiful the way that he shows up, and also very comical. So my mom and stepdad have visited, and they'll be up in our loft where our guest room is, and he'll turn the fan and the lights on and saying hello, and I'm like, Dad, don't freak them out, like I'll turn it off. But he doesn't do it when people are over here. Like he knows better. But when
yeah,
I'm at home, to this day, every day, multiple times a day, some of the skeptics are going to say your toaster is broken, but every time I walk into the kitchen, it lights up. It's like doodle, doodle, And I'm like, good morning.
Totally
It
him.
doesn't happen to anybody else. It's just me.
Right.
And
Just
it's,
you. Yep.
yeah, it's not even the same side. He does both sides because there's 4 places to put the slices of bread, and each side has its own light and gradient of toasting you want. And it's like he's playing music on that thing when I walk into the kitchen.
Oh, I love it.
I
Did you
know.
guys have anything with like breakfasts or anything?
Well, I mean, he loved to eat, but I think it's just like the most obvious thing when you walk into our
Yeah.
kitchen, and we have a
Yeah.
small galley kitchen, but it's like the thing that's very prominent that when you walk
Yes.
in, it gets your attention.
Yes.
I think he's just playing. He's on the other side and he's learning what his capabilities are as a spirit without a body. And I listen back or I think about things he said when he was alive. And a part of me wishes I was more spiritually awoken when he was alive, because I'm hearing
Mhm.
it all now. And that's intentional, I guess, for me, because the fact that I remember it. But he would talk about how his body was his spacesuit. He
Oh,
would he
oh, I
would
like that.
and we touched lightly on the last episode about maybe some degree of hereditary, the strength in which you have spirituality or these gifts. And
Yeah.
my dad was an acupuncturist herbologist. The first time I ever experienced energy work was him moving my chi over my body. And I remember feeling like a tingling sensation all over my body. And I was like, Dad, what are you doing? He's like, I'm moving your chi. And I'm like, what?
Wow.
This I was in my 20s. And
Right.
and I also do not like needles. Like I have a vasovagal syncope issue with needles, with blood. Like I can't even it's hard for me to even say that word without fainting. But he would give me treatments, and I think for me that was like the beginning of understanding your energetic body and
Yeah.
knowing that your entire constitution isn't just made up of tissue and cells. It's also the spiritual being of your body and how it's all interconnected. So where Western medicine puts a band-aid on
Mhm.
symptoms and gives you pharmaceuticals to numb the sensation, Eastern medicine, which he taught, was finding the root of the issue and fixing that so that it wasn't a long-term problem where you had to take medication to resolve it to be
Sure.
comfortable. So I hear a lot of when I'm going through things in life right now, and even though he hasn't been here for 9 years, I still hear him and the things he would say to me when I wasn't really attuned to it before
Mhm.
he left.
Mhm. Mhm.
A lot of it is salt water. So if something's achy, soaking in Epsom salt, he used to say that all the time. I think about when I get eczema, there's like heat trapped in the body. And so
Mhm.
to me, I don't have it right now. And I think it's because I'm dancing so much. Like I'm moving a
Mhm.
lot of energy out of my body that has
Mhm.
stagnant. This kind of goes hand in hand with the relationship I feel like I've developed with my dad in his afterlife. Or I mean,
Mhm.
it's a different form of life, right? But he's very, very present. And I think one of the coolest experiences that I've had with him since he's been physically gone, it was a family thing that we went through where after he passed, unfortunately, his estate went into probate, and just a lot of icky things, adult things that no one wants to deal with came up. But he was flagging something to me in a very, very clever way. My neighbor had told me about these emergency preparedness lights. So they act like a generator. You plug it
Mhm.
into the wall, and if it detects that the electricity goes out, it goes on.
Mm.
Right. So I
Mhm.
put one on
Mhm.
each floor because we were going through a series. You were here probably. We were going
Blackouts.
through
Yeah.
series of
Yeah.
earthquakes. I mean, do we live in modern day society? Why does our electricity go out so much? And one particular night, the electricity is on. We're watching TV, and it goes on, and I'm like, oh, weird. That's weird. So I walk over to it. It's in the kitchen, and I go to turn it off, and he turns it off, and I'm like,
Oh.
huh, okay.
Mhm.
So I walk away. He turns it on again. There's no function on these lights that has an option for what was happening. It wasn't like a
Wow.
steady, like on, off, on, off, on, off. It was
Yeah.
like, I'm walking over, you're turning it off. I walk away, you turn it back on. So I turn around, walk over again, he turns it off. So
Oh
it's
my God.
not even, it wasn't, it was very much a communication. And I'm like, what's going on? And it felt like an emergency, right? Because later that, I think it was the same night. It was either that night or the next day. My uncle, who used to be a real estate agent, periodically will look in our area. He's not practicing anymore, but he called me and he said, "Your dad's property is listed on MLS." And I said, "What?" We're going through probate, so nothing should be happening.
Yeah.
And I get a hold of the person who's in charge of the estate. I'm like, hey, this is awkward. This is weird. Why would this be listed? And she's like, that shouldn't be up or whatever. So my dad had somehow managed to like, get
Let's just
my attention about this, communicate it to his brother who called me. And I was,
That's unbelievable.
I mean, right? It's that situation where, how is that
Right.
possible? I can't
Right.
even make this up. Yeah, really
I
crazy.
love that. I love that. So I wanted to like something that really struck me when you were sharing about your dad is that inner wisdom that comes through like with the acupuncture, like that was his background, the herbologist, having these downloads of knowing what to do without you studying it, right? You didn't study that, but you get these knowings and this understanding. And I think it's such a beautiful connection. And well, how did like the original healers know that if you took this certain herb, it would do this to the body? They had that open channel of communicating with the plants, communicating with the spirit world. It was like, it was a different kind of ability to communicate. And the fact that you can do that with your dad who has all of this wisdom, and that, you don't even have to study it. It's just like, oh yeah, I know what to do. I know what to do here because your dad is channeling that. And I think there's so many people that have that like innate knowing that comes through, whether it's through a spirit or a communication. I just think that's fascinating.
Mika, you know what's blowing my mind? And I was like turning red as you were saying it, because I talked to you. So just for context, Mika and I have not talked at all about what we would talk about on this episode outside of what we said at the end of the last episode, that we would kind of share some ghost tales and whatever. But I've been taking notes since our last chat. And one of the things I wrote down, I said that I'm carrying on my dad's legacy of energy healing. His modality was
Yes.
acupuncture and herbology, and mine is this. And so when you
Yes.
just validated that,
Woo,
oh
boo tingles.
I know. I was just thinking by the end of each episode, the hair on my legs are just going to be so
Yeah.
long because
The hair on my head is like just so tingling right now.
yeah, I mean,
So tingling.
I try not to say it every time. Body is constantly just, it's this hyper state of, I don't know, the vibration of your body and the cells that just tingle all over. When we
Yes.
talk about this
Yes.
stuff, I want to get into the science of that. Like, why do our bodies, where do these sensations come from?
Right. That's a
About it.
good one. That's a good one.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. I mean, just all of that wisdom. It's just so fascinating to me that we have the ability to tap into our ancestors, the beings around us. I had this experience yesterday in this healing. I saw what the trauma was and what had kind of pulled me off of my confidence in mediumship. And I saw my grandmother there, and I didn't know my grandmother, and she died my mom's mom died before I was born. And she handed me this like purple cloak in the healing that I did. I looked at her and I totally understood this was her gift too. This was her gift. And so she's like on the other side, like helping me
Yeah.
with this gift, just like your dad is helping you understand what, his wisdom. It's like all of us have these beings that are around us that like if we can listen, we can learn so much from, and just have these knowings where it's like, how did you know that? I
Yeah.
got
And
all
it's
these
not being
got my
afraid to,
got my
it's not,
crew.
yeah, it's not being afraid to tap into it. And I can
Yeah.
tell when I'm channeling that intuitive wisdom from spirit guides, from ancestors, from angels, or whatever you want to call it, because there's just a flow of information that for
Mhm.
me, when I do get into that modality of sharing, and when I know someone needs to hear something, it's like opening a floodgate of information
Yeah.
that I've never thought about. It's never
Mhm.
crossed my mind, but it just comes so naturally. And
That's a
and to me,
gift.
yeah, sometimes I feel like maybe I should have channeled that into some form of therapy or something. But what we're doing right now is very revealing and helpful in just understanding that this is something to be shared and it's relatable. Still in much of a discovery mode about what I'm supposed to do with it. This feels
Yeah.
like the right place to be sharing it as well. So I'm
Yeah.
so thrilled that we're doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's like the beauty of all of this. I mean, we live in this world that doesn't always necessarily foster all of these gifts, and so that's part of the unfolding. Where does this gift fit in? The CEO of a company, maybe you use it in your business, or maybe you are a therapist. Wherever your gifts are supposed to shine, I think it'll just naturally unfold if you
Right.
just stay open to really what lights you up and just
Exactly.
follow that.
Exactly. And just to be able to share on a platform like this, so like the level of accessibility and knowing
Yeah.
that in some degree it's somewhat, I don't want to say a support group, but a way to look inward and figure out for yourself how it might relate and maybe inspire in some way to tap more into an area of yourself that you wanted to discover more. Anyways, I do have
Yeah.
one more story that I want to share. I know we're
Yes.
we've been on here a while.
I talked for a long time.
No, it was so fascinating. I love it. We still have so much more to share. One story that really stands out to me that I want to share that it's related to my son more than me. Bodhi was a year and a half to 2, like he just started talking, and we were at the beach, and a huge hummingbird moth. I don't know if you
Mm.
know what that is, but it's called a hummingbird moth because it's a moth the size of a hummingbird. Zach's stepdad passed away way too soon. He was, I think, 41 going on 42, which
Mm.
as I say
Mhm.
that now, I'm like, that's crazy because
Yeah.
we're past that.
Right.
um,
Right.
which you're like, man, God, I whatever, I can't even imagine. But we're at the beach and this hummingbird moth just was on in the surf on the ground, and I think Zach picked him up and it immediately flew to Bodhi's tank top. It's just
Mm.
on his chest.
Mm.
And if it had been me or most people, I would have been like,
Ah.
get off me. But my son was like, help him, daddy. Help
Mm.
him. And so
Oh.
Zach is lightly pulling him off of his shirt and he's now holding him. And Bodhi says in the clearest toddler version of himself, he says, he's like your dad. He's like your
Mm.
dad. And
Mm.
Zach is not receiving this message. He's like, I'm like his dad. Like he totally changed what he said because it just doesn't make sense.
Right.
And I obviously had the camera going because this is extraordinary. You know, this gigantic insect has landed on my son. My inclination was not to, I mean, also, why didn't I do that? I just didn't, right? But I took out my camera because I was like, this is fascinating. Like,
Right.
I had to point out to Zach, your stepdad's birthday was yesterday and his death date is tomorrow or it was like a day
Wow.
away. I'm like, this period of time in which he showed up in this form on our son,
Yes.
like,
That's amazing.
was magic. It was
That's
so magical.
Daddy,
Yeah, you want
Daddy,
me,
help him.
you want me to help him?
Okay.
Wants to go on your shirt. Okay. There we go. Come here, bud. There we go.
He's like you. He's like your dad.
He's like, I'm like his dad.
I love how open Bodhi is to be able to receive that, and understand that that's his stepdad coming
Yeah.
through.
So, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, like these ghost tales, they're not all scary. Yeah, we both have them and we'll share
Right.
more to come, but they're also very beautiful and
Absolutely.
inspiring and just providing a level of comfort in a time when you're missing someone and they show up and
Totally.
I like,
Totally. And animals have that, like a lot of, I've heard and I've experienced too, a lot of animal spirits showing up, our loved ones showing up through animals. A lot of people, after someone passes away, they'll see Hummingbirds are a big one, like the hummingbird moth, but hummingbirds are a big one that people will see a lot after someone passes away. I just think it's so beautiful, that connection with the animal world too, that our
Yeah.
loved ones can come through and say hi through that as
Right.
well. So cool.
I feel like I feel a little Snow Whitey sometimes because when I go places, a lot of animals come out. Like I went to
Uh-huh.
Geography with my friend Sarah. She has a place there. And she's like, I've never been here and have had so many interactions with animals. And my brain immediately goes to like, what's the message? Let me look up the animals
Right.
and see what I need to know right now. But I mean, we had an owl, like this huge owl.
Oh,
We had a coyote. We had a rattlesnake, which is the embodiment of change. We had kangaroo mice, like a whole family of them right outside the window just dancing. Like
wow. That's awesome.
yeah, but it's not even like I don't even have to be in a place like Joshua Tree for that to happen. I was driving to dance class last week and a ladybug landed on my windshield. You couldn't miss it because he was like dead in the center of my windshield. I'm on the 10
Oh
getting
my
onto the
gosh.
405 and I'm like, dang, this insect is like bold,
On you.
I
On
was
you.
I was kind of like, do I need to drive slower? I don't want him to like just, but I'm like, how did you get on my windshield? Where did you come from?
Right.
But they land on me all
Exactly.
the time. I'll go for runs and there'll be one on my, and they'll just run with me and I just say hi. And I need to tap in and understand who that is. I have a
Yeah.
thing with ladybugs, for sure.
Well, I think we should probably cover that too. Like to me, it's very empathy, like empaths are like, I can always tell an empath usually, like if you go to someone's Facebook who's an empath, they have like animal pictures all over the place. Like empaths just have that natural like ability to communicate with animals. And it's like that. I don't know. I think it's just the good. I always say like empaths have like the best energy. It's why like narcissists, I think, are attracted to empaths because that's like the best. Empaths have the best energy. And I think animals they feel that too. They're like, "Woo, it's safe here. It's beautiful here." I
Yeah.
love that.
I'll wrap up with a couple things about my dad that just sort of popped up as we were sharing here. His animal form is the egret.
Hmm.
And no matter where I go, I always see an egret. And in the
How
most
did you know that? How did you know that that's his animal form?
one, annoying, and two, these egrets are so in my face. And that it's like the ladybug on my windshield. These egrets are so in my face, but also he was a biology teacher in high school. And
Hmm.
when we grew up as kids, he used to point out all the birds.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So there's that, right? And then there was the confirmation that after he passed away, my uncles see egrets as well. So one was so bold as to fly into his pool room. He lives in Castro Valley, and there was food in there, and this egret was inside on the table, just chowing down, eating all the food.
Okay, that's your dad.
It's my dad because he loved to eat. My dad
Oh my
loved to eat,
God, on the pool table. That's
Yeah, I mean, he
hilarious.
was inside this built, like I don't even know how an egret would have gotten in there. And also, I don't know. I mean, they're up on a hill and doesn't seem like very egrety, but
Right.
an egret was in there chowing down. And my Uncle Frank was like, "Yeah, your dad came to visit, and he was going to town on the fish in there and eating whatever." And I'm like, "Yep, that was Dad." And then his twin brother, they used to go for walks around this lake in Foster City. And that, of course, because it's a lagoon, are a lot of egrets. But my Uncle Bruce mentioned how an egret always shows up when he goes on walks there. And then for me, down on the beach in Santa Monica, I had one walking with me one day. Like just kept flying. I'd be walking and it kept flying to me. And then there was one time we went to Malibu, a park up there, and there was an egret so close to Zach Bodie and I at this park. Like it looked way too close to be to humans to feel comfortable enough to be there. But it was literally like if I maybe not even 10 feet away on the grass
Okay.
in a park area.
Oh my
I've
God.
never seen an egret there. I was
That's definitely your dad. I mean, I can't imagine. I'm sure everyone listening is like, I would guess that most people have not had egret experiences
no, I have
like that.
more.
I've seen them
No.
from far away. I've never had like a close
I mean,
encounter
it's
with an egret.
insane. When I was driving up to the Bay Area, I saw them along the 5 freeway. Like I
Mhm.
saw probably 5 to 10 along the road, along the freeway. That's weird because I've never seen them
That's totally
there.
weird. Yeah.
When we went to Kauai, the entire island was so full of egrets, and I've never seen egrets there when I go there, but they were everywhere. They were as common as the roosters. That's how many we saw when we went.
Okay, that's crazy.
But I have the most mind-blowing one ever that I still am like, dang, he's like insanely powerful. I was going to Ojai with V. It was a very congested freeway heading to Ojai. And it's just bumper to bumper
33,
on
yeah.
both sides. It's concrete jungle. Like there's nothing in the area that would signify that you would see any kind of wildlife.
Yeah.
And we're driving, and this egret is flying in like above our car. Actually, it was in the distance, and I'm like, what? Because I remember saying to her, I'm like, what is that? That's a big bird. And it's flying towards us. And I'm like, I'm trying not to get into a car accident because it's stopping no traffic. And I go, V, she goes, what is that? I'm like, is it an egret? She goes, I don't know what an egret is. And so she's looking up on the phone. And as she's looking up what an egret is on the phone, it is now over our car. Wingspan over our car to the side over the freeway in LA. And she pulls up a picture. She goes, it is an egret. Look, and it matches exactly the way the bird is flying over the car. And I'm like, hi, Dad.
Oh my God. That's so awesome.
Yeah. And if you want one final confirmation, she had a dream that night of she said there were egrets popping up everywhere in her dreams. And she's like, your dad was there for sure, because all I saw were eyes. And when the light illuminated on them, there were just a bunch of egrets in her dream.
Oh my gosh. I love it. I love it. Your dad has a strong spirit. Like, to be able to come through like that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. It's pretty wild. In my very early days of discovery and wanting answers and connect and wanting to better communicate with him, when I would miraculously be in touch with mediums to understand what the message was. And a big part of me was like, I was not present when he passed away. And so I felt like I had some closure issues about that.
Mm-hmm.
And the one particular medium had said he wanted to be remembered for living, not dying. And that put it to rest for me. Like, that's what I needed to hear. Awesome. He'll find ways to get messages to me through mediums. I'll have someone come over to measure for new blinds, and it will somehow turn into a conversation about something related, and being like, you need to call this woman immediately. And then I'll call this medium, and she will have been like, your dad has been very persistent about me telling you something. And so it's pretty miraculous in the ways that he's found ways of getting information to me or just expressing something. That's incredible.
I love that. And I love how spirits on the other side find people, like they find mediums. Like, I always thought, like, when I was doing more readings, I always had this sensation that it wasn't really the people who were paying me for the readings. It was their loved ones who were the customers. Like, they were coming and finding me. They were coming and I feel like it's like they're searching for, like, okay, who can deliver this message? And I've had that too, where people have been bugging the crap out of me until I call the person and go, listen, your grandma has a message for you. It's a trip.
It also relates to information. It doesn't even have to be about someone who's passed. The thing that happens the most for me is someone who maybe I worked with or I haven't been in touch with for years. I will end up having very long conversations with them about career pathing, about just insights about their life. And it's always so random to me because it's the same way. I'm like, I never in a million years thought I'd be talking to this person so in depth about something on the phone, when we were just sort of.
Yeah. I feel like part of your gift, like, and I think you maybe even said it could have been on the last episode. I don't know when we were talking, but I feel like you can dial into people's gifts and purpose. Like, it's like, okay, like how you guided Kaleo and I to do our journeys, and like rolled out the red carpet with that beautiful house in Ojai. I just feel like you can dial into like what people are supposed to be doing or what their souls really calling for, which is like a huge gift because a lot of people don't trust what's coming through or they've been blocked from it or it's just like it's such a gift to be able, because I remember like, so Cleo and I have this idea that it's coming to fruition, but I remember it's called On the Road to Healing, and it's a show, and I it's so funny, like it was like a couple months ago and I thought it just came out of the blue. I'm like, I should probably call Kristen and check in and see if this is an alignment. And it was like that, just like, I hadn't even really thought about like that being your gift. It just sort of was like, why don't you call Kristen and like tap in? And like, I'm like, that's definitely one of your gifts for
Thank
sure.
you. Thank you
Yeah.
for saying that. Yeah, you know what it is though too, when I know it or when I communicate it, it's almost like stating the obvious to me. Like it's
Yeah.
just so apparent. And I'm also just reflecting back to that person what they already know. It's not like
Yeah.
I hold information that, when I say it, it's almost like that validation that they already knew
Yeah.
about themselves.
Yeah.
But they needed to hear it externally.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's what like a psychic reading is. You know what I mean? Like you're tapping into someone's soul, someone's spirit, and just reflecting information that they already know. Like I feel like there's I still do some readings, and I had a reading the other day, and she's just such a bright light, and she was like, thank you, like I knew all of this. I needed to hear it. And I was like, of course you did. Of course you did. Like, I don't have like access to anything you don't have access to.
Exactly.
It's just being able to like listen in. And I was like, my readings have become more now. I'm going to ask you a lot of questions, and then I'm going to really listen energetically to how you're answering. And that's going to give me the information that I need to reflect to you like what you already know, like what your truth is. It's nothing that like I'm coming up with. It's you already knowing it. But we do sometimes, we need people to reflect that to us. It's great to have somebody that can dial in, that really has that like gift of being able to dial in and being able to reflect to you what's in alignment. And you know it, but just hearing it from another person and having that validation sometimes is just like everything that we need.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's probably the biggest takeaway I've learned on this journey of mine is you can't even deny it. It's just a trusting and the knowing. I am not giving anything to this person that they truly didn't understand themselves. Like yeah.
Yeah.
You brilliantly stated
Yeah.
it. All right. Well, this has been a very fun, productive hour and a half. I don't know.
Yes.
I have to edit it down to an hour. And not speed it up this time so we don't sound like chipmunks. It was so fun. And there are so many more spiritual tales to be told. I know that I've only just started scratching the surface, as I'm sure you have as well. We both have a lifetime of experience. I was having this download while we were talking that we're just a couple of mediums like shooting the shit.
Right. Exactly.
Like, what would a couple of people who have, who are tapping into the gifts talk about with each other? And that's
right.
So it's almost like that SNL version of those ladies. They've got their Christmas sweaters.
I love that.
Cookies. It's our own witchy version. We end up actually wearing
we
the
could
same
totally
shit.
spoof ourselves. Like,
No, I feel like a spoof sometimes, all the time.
Totally.
We are. We are that. Watch. It'll be
Totally
on SNL.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I can see it now. Well, I actually had one of my very best friends who we kind of like drifted a little bit. She was like, when I was really tapping into my mediumship, she's like, how are we going to communicate? She's like an atheist, right? And she's just like, when we die, we're done. We're going into the ground. Like, she's not believing in another realm, nothing. And she's like, what are we going to talk about? I'm like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? She's like, you're a medium and I'm an atheist. And I was like, well, what did we talk about when we were little? Like, what have we talked about like our whole lives? Like, we don't have to have the same perspective. But something about like me calling myself, it really jarred her. Like, now we are going to have nothing in common. I'm like, no.
When things trigger that, there's something to be learned in that. So I think
absolutely
confused that when they get rubbed by something, that is the perfect time to go inward and be like, why did that bother me? When something rubs me, what do I need to learn? I want to know it as quickly
Absolutely.
as possible because I don't want this feeling ever again.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And to me with her, and I could be wrong about this, but she's a medium. She's got those gifts. She would always surprise me like, Meika, I had a dream about you and did it. And I'm like, what? Like always. No, she's not going to admit it. Maybe not in this lifetime, or maybe she will, but I think that's why it rubbed her.
I thought like the definition of an atheist was someone who was without religion, which I think religion and spirituality, they have like like there's a different through line, but like I don't relate to being religious at all. Like I feel like it's
I don't either.
Dogma with it, but like spirituality feels just more, for lack of a better term, like just organic and like it's just part of your being. So to me, I don't see that even as like a religion, but
right. Yeah. I don't really either, but I guess like there's a spirituality to God, right? Like,
right.
I mean, I guess it just depends. And the word God is like, that's a whole nother show.
Like, yeah, everything. And the source, universe, God, like it's all the same thing, but there's like multiple interpretations of what that is.
Absolutely.
My experience with spirituality is I'm not putting names to it in terms of like someone else is owning it and I have to go through them to understand it. Like I'm just dialing into my own intuitive wisdom. I grew up Roman Catholic and you see all these like rules and things you shouldn't do. And I'm just like, how about we just all be good people and not hurt each other? And I was always so confused by like why there had to be like a nomenclature for being a good person in your mind. And then, having just opposing views of like who believes in it gets so icky to me, and I'm not to say that people who are religious are not at all bad people. People have the right. It's all about intention. Comes back to intention.
Absolutely.
With it and how you treat other people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if like for me, like I don't consider myself religious either at all. I'm just like tapped. I believe that we're energy and we, there's other realms that definitely we tap into. And I think we're multidimensional beings. And but I've also seen like, there's a whole history of, what some of the religious people did to the witches and to more of like the pagan type of consciousness. But I've also seen religion like, really help people, like who were like total addicts that like, found Christianity and I'm like, if it works, if somehow that framework works for you and you're like, it taps you into that there's a higher power, then go for it. Like there's no judgment against it. It's just like, there's just a lot of hypocrisy, I think sometimes in the dogma.
I agree. I think the through line and if there is like an overlapping is faith. It's faith.
Yeah.
Faith.
Yes.
And like I think a lot of what spirituality is too is understanding and having faith in that, like you've got spirit guides and ancestors and angels that have your back. It's the same thing. It's just kind of a different interpretation and lens on it.
Yeah.
I feel like that could be a whole nother topic.
Totally. Yeah. I guess I don't like it when it's used to separate,
Right, I don't like that.
My way is the right way,
It's like that's what I have a hard time with because it's like there's all these labels assigned. If you are, you're not this or that. And I love this podcast I listened to, this woman Blue, and she got it from somebody else, but I love this concept of survival of the kindest versus survival of the fittest versus,
I love that. Because I was thinking of like, what are taglines? I was like, I want my tagline to be kindness is magic. Like, because to me, that's like the ultimate magic is kindness. And I think people overlook that like really kind, genuinely kind people are so freaking magical. Like I look at Coco and he's so kind. Like he's like, I tell him like, you're the nicest person. You're the kindest person I've ever met. And there's magic in that because people love him. Like he could create worlds through his kindness because people like want to be around him and they listen to him. And even though he's like kind of shy and like it's his kindness is just, it creates this energy that is really like it calms people, it soothes people, it heals people. Like people that are like kind of troubled kids kind of gravitate towards him. And it's just like, it's healing. It's so healing.
And that's to me the true meaning of beauty. How you make other people feel.
Yeah,
That's your legacy.
totally. Okay, well, that was such a great talk, a great session. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for flying with us. And remember, kindness is magic.